in not mentioning that, because no discussions that we have in government now do not include measures to mitigate, to adapt to climate change. We in the Philippines have once again uh, achieved the dubious distinction of being the most vulnerable country to the effects of climate change. And so that adds another dimension to everything that we do. Because if you will remember in the remarks that I just made, everything, all the development that we talk about is premised on it being sustainable. And that is something that we really are very serious about, because we feel the effects. I was on my way here, we were all remarking on the fact that it's raining a little bit. And this is strange because we are in the middle of a drought. Beyond that, for example, here in the northern part of the country right now, we are suffering a drought. And the agricultural cost to that drought has already reached the billions of pesos. We have been able to prepare for it to a certain extent, but nonetheless, that is a problem. So that is the situation in the northern part of the country. In the southern part of the country, we're suffering floods. And this strange weather patterns are things that we are not used to. We are used to typhoons. We are used to the typhoon season coming in at a certain time of year, passing. The route of the typhoon is generally well known. And at the local level, we have been able to, we know how to prepare. But since, I would say, since Yolanda or Haiyan, everything has changed. And so we need to be fairly quick on our feet when we try to analyze what is going to happen. What the scientists have been telling us for many, many years now is happening. It is not imminent. It is here. And that is one of the greatest challenges that the Philippines faces. And we are expending a great many resources and a good deal of energy to try and make sure. Of course, you can imagine agriculture is the one that is the area that's most affected, and that is a critical area. So when you look at our financial numbers, you have to isolate the shocks that are hitting the economy and remove agriculture to be able to understand clearly what is happening to the economy. Because what is happening to agriculture are shocks that are completely out of control. They are nonetheless real and have to be attended to and have to be dealt with. So the shift from fossil fuels to renewables is something that takes up a great deal of our thinking, and that is why many of the investments that we are hoping to attract are in that area, in renewables.
Well, thank you so much for underlining that. And a few years ago, we used to say that we're dealing with the climate change due to the next generation and our grandchildren. But what you're saying now, President, I think you're so right, is happening now and here, the climate change. And we're seeing that the price of inaction far exceeds the price of action. But we're also touched on the digital economies. I think it would be good to have someone on this. I think Jackie Wang, Google, where are you, Jackie? I think you have a comment or a question also to the President. He already spoke a lot about the digital as an opportunity and no more digital divide.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you so much for that speech. My name is Jackie. I'm the country manager for Google Philippines here. So you mentioned and you speak a lot of digitization. And from a Google perspective, when we look at our digital economy report, our report reflects a lot of what you mentioned about the growth potential and the amazing growth that we've seen in Philippines. In Philippines in 2023, the digital economy is as big as $23 billion in gross merchandising value, and that's a compound CAGR growth of 16%. You also mentioned the importance of digitization around upskilling and reskilling. My question for you is, what do you see as the biggest challenge when it comes to digitization, and how companies like Google, from the private sector, many of us in this room, how can we help in this digitization journey to help make a digital Philippines?
Well, we are still at the level where we're worried about connectivity. And we're working very hard because being an island nation, that becomes a real factor. That becomes a real challenge. And to start with was with government. When we first came into office, we conducted a survey and on what are the consumers' habits when it comes to the use of the internet, and we got back a statistic which was really rather worrisome, and that was that 95% of an ordinary Filipino citizen's activities in terms of payment, for example, clearances and all that, 95% of their activity is over the internet. The last 5% was government. And that's why we still are falling behind. We are catching up though, because there have been several groups that have come in that have extended our fiber optic network and have been setting up data centers. And we are hoping we are slowly starting to design a cloud specifically for the Philippines, so that there is some security. Now, having said security, the cybersecurity problem has become quite pronounced, and this is maybe the darker side of the technology. We have many instances where there are scams and there is hacking. In terms of actual security, we also have fallen victim to a great many of these nefarious activities. And so, yes, so those are the areas that we worry about. If you want to know more, seated at your table is the Secretary of Information Technology and Communication. So I'm sure he will give you an earful as to the detailed situation here in the Philippines.
Thank you, and we will hear more from the Secretary a little bit later, so we'll tap into him. You know that there is a lot of interest now also in investing in the Philippines. And when I looked at the numbers on FDIs compared to some other countries, the FDI being invested into the Philippines are still a bit lower than in some neighboring countries. And I was thinking, Prashant Kumar, you're with KKR, KKR being one of the largest then private equity companies in the world. What will it take, and maybe you have a separate question to the President too, but if you in 15 seconds can say what it will take to get even more FDIs into the Philippines, it would be good, and maybe a question to the President.
Thank you, Borge. Mr. President, a privilege to be here with you. We have been investing in Philippines for last several years, invested with many partners, in a company called Grow Sari, which is enabling sari stores, with Lance, with Manny Pangilinan in Metro Pacific hospitals, in Maya, to your point about digitalization, creating a digital bank, and payments access for many underbanked consumers, as well as in infrastructure in Pinnacle Towers, Frontier, which is creating telecom towers around the country and in generations. So thank you for all of your leadership and your administration's leadership in enabling investors like us to come in and invest here. One of the points that I wanted to highlight is it'll be great for the country to really showcase success stories of investments in the country around the world. I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing more about the changes that you and your administration have made, which are really enabling investments across digitalization and infrastructure, specifically in climate, as going forward. And that's one thing which many investors around the world are less familiar about, the things that have changed. So my request would be to just really showcase some of the changes and opportunities that the country is creating. And then the second one, which we've been discussing with some of your colleagues in the administration, has been around creating the basic foundational layer for digitalization, which enable national ID, credit bureaus, around foundations, which then the businesses can come in and invest and start creating new opportunities for the consumers. So, but we are very excited about investing here. Again, question to you and your thoughts on what can we as investors, foreign investors, do to create more awareness, and what can we do to support your agenda in drawing more FDI into the country?
Thank you for that. And but I'm quite pleased that the areas that you mentioned are the areas that we are working very hard on. But these are structural changes that we have to make, and by their very nature, structural changes. Although we can make them in as quickly as possible, the effects as they go through the processes of the economy do take time, and so we have, I think, properly identified the areas that need work, and some of those have already been in terms of legislation, for example, some of those obsolete, shall we say, legislation has now been amended to be more open. We've really there are two elements to what we have tried to do. Number one is the recognition of the private sector as a full partner in the development of the economy, and second is to open the economy and to bring more the foreign investments in, but that not foreign investments just because they're foreign investments in the areas that we feel need more work, and that is why I'm pleased that the areas that you mentioned are things that we have been looking at and have started to make the necessary changes, necessary structural changes. People in Davos, we were talking about recovery. I speak of transformation. I no longer speak about recovery. We have to transform the economy, and we have to transform the way we do business. We have to transform the way we think in many ways. And that's what we are hoping to try and do. Again, my confidence really comes from the fact of the workforce that I have such great faith in, because they have the record of the Philippine workforce here and abroad, especially abroad, has been rather good, and that's why I know that the Filipinos can in fact do the job, and it's just a question of us, together with private sector partners, training them and getting those skill sets available, making those skill sets available to them, putting up programs to make them to certify them in whatever specific skills are necessary. So again, that it is I suppose maybe it's a bit of a selective process in terms of FDI coming into the country, but any additional activity, of course, is welcome. But of course, we focus as well on specific areas. We talk about agriculture. We talk about mineral processing. We talk about battery production. We talk about renewables, the renewable shift. We talk about digitalization. These are the areas that we feel need focus. And I have to say that the potential investors or the present investors who would like to expand their operations and potential investors who have yet to come to the Philippines have actually responded in those particular areas. And so I think that we are headed down the right path. It's still nip and tuck a little bit as we go along, But I think overall, I'm confident that we have made the right choices.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. With your permission, maybe I can take one more, and then from a successful Filipino, because we're now heard from the international community, but we knew and know from the delegation you brought with you in Davos a year ago, there's so much also strong businesses here in the Philippines, and maybe it's hard to then make a choice, but I see Ramon Ang from San Miguel sitting over there. He is very eloquent, as you know. So I'm thinking, Ramon, the Philippines economy is growing fast, and I guess you're optimistic about the future. Any questions to the president?
First of all, I would like to thank the President and Borgie for this opportunity. I'd like to share with our guest today about the questions when I was in Davos 2 years ago. You know, in that conference, people are saying Philippines is not competitive because our power rates are so expensive and our fuel prices are so expensive in this country. But the truth is, Philippines, if you compare it apple to apple, actual cost of power and fuel is the lowest in Asia, except Philippine government imposed excise tax and VAT. And of course, plus all other countries around the region are subsidizing their fuel and power. But of course, that cannot last forever. Like our neighboring country, Malaysia, is subsidizing $20 billion a year. And Philippines, being a modern country, tama ba yan, sir? Modern, and market force. Philippines practice market force. So in this country, we don't subsidize and we impose taxes. So, and also I'd like to share with our guests here today, do you know that Philippines is one of the earliest to develop geothermal power? Our first geothermal power was built in 1977. And today our geothermal is 2,000 megawatt. And Philippines is also one of the first in Asia to build nuclear power plant in 1976. And also we operated discovered our Malampaya natural gas early on in 1980s. So Philippines, by the way, also solar. I was talking to my colleague here. Solar was first built in the Philippines in 1980, way ahead of everybody in Asia. So Philippines is very, very advanced during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the unfortunate event of military takeover stopped everything. And now we are trying to catch up thanks to our beloved president. Thank you po.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramon. Well, he has the SMC, San Miguel has really been a very large part. Sabina Boitis is smiling. Maybe he has different figures from Ramon in terms of the power generation. We'll get into that. We'll talk about that.
We can give him the floor too, to keep the balance.
But yes, SMC has become. We just signed with them. They formed a consortium to improve our airport, which has been adjudged as being one of the worst airports for many years. So we're about to change that. That's part of the physical connectivity we talked about, but also because of tourism. Tourism is the contribution of tourism to the economy is a significant number. So we're hoping to continue that. So. That is why that is precisely one of the best examples that we have of a partnership between government and the private sector, and this is one of the, I believe, despite being the largest PPP that we have ever entered into, we were able to process we were able to go through the entire process in record time. And that's what we try to keep hoping for, to make sure that the roadblocks that are unnecessary, that really have been part of the evolution. One of the things that really happened here was that many things were instituted during the pandemic that no longer apply. And we have to remove those again and redesign, as it were, the economy. And so one of those areas is PPP. And thus far, I believe we have been successful in attracting that kind of that kind of arrangement. However, we do not limit ourselves to that. We look to G2G arrangements. We look to purely commercial joint venture arrangements between private corporations, and so that is our way of opening, as I said, the economy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We would have loved this to continue for another hour, but we know, Mr. President, that very soon you will have a big interview with Bloomberg. Then we know you're seeing Secretary Blinken. So we feel very privileged that you wanted to spend time with us. And also, as we discussed in the short bilateral meeting, it's always good to have a Q&A before you go on Bloomberg, you know. So I hope this was a good warm-up for you too, for Bloomberg.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to always come and explain what it is that we are trying to achieve here in the Philippines, and I think that it is an important part of bringing the Philippines really to the world. And one of the comments that I made very early on again in the administration was that we have to reintroduce the Philippines to the world because we have become insular. The pandemic played a huge part in that phenomenon. So that is what I think that we have met with some success. So thank you for these opportunities such as this. I'm glad to be able to explain and to give an idea to all our partners and prospective partners, give an idea on the investment terrain in the Philippines. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank